Have you ever stopped to wonder if the very ingredients resting quietly in your kitchen pantry right now could be the invisible guardians of your brain, holding the power to turn back the tide of a stroke after you cross the age of 65? I ask you this because in my 25 years of practicing medicine, I have stood at the bedside of more than 30,000 souls, and the most heartbreaking realization I have ever come to is that the greatest tragedies are often the ones we could have prevented with a simple wooden spoon and a bit of ancient wisdom. As I sit here today, the evening sun casting long, golden shadows across my mahogany desk at the clinic, I find myself tracing the worn edges of a stethoscope that has listened to the rhythmic fluttering of thousands of aging hearts. Each beat tells a story. Some are strong and resilient like an old oak tree, while others are as fragile as a bird's wing, struggling against the invisible pressures of time and neglect. For many of my patients, the word stroke arrives like a sudden, violent thunderstorm on a clear summer day, leaving behind a landscape of shattered speech and frozen limbs. We are taught to fear high blood pressure, to loathe the habit of smoking, and to rely blindly on the cold, white plastic of pill bottles, yet we almost never talk about the profound, life-giving alchemy of the food on our plates. It is not your fault that this knowledge has remained hidden. The modern medical world often prefers the complexity of a prescription over the simplicity of a nutrient. But I have seen the truth in the quiet corridors of recovery. Stroke prevention after 65 is not about some extreme, punishing diet or a drawer full of overpriced supplements that promise the moon. It is about a delicate, sacred balance of everyday nutrients that are scientifically proven to keep your blood vessels as flexible as a young willow branch and your mind as sharp as a diamond. You must understand that after you reach 65, the landscape of your body undergoes a silent tectonic shift. Your arteries, which once pulsed with effortless grace, may have begun to lose their elasticity, becoming stiff and brittle like old parchment. Your brain becomes a more sensitive sanctuary, more vulnerable to the microscopic fires of inflammation that we doctors call the silent killer. Tiny imbalances in your daily diet, the kind of small omissions you wouldn't even notice while rushing through your day, can quietly and insidiously raise your risk for a catastrophic brain event without a single moment of warning. Yet, as I look into your eyes through this story, I want you to feel the warmth of hope rising in your chest, because the news is not just good, it is transformative. By simply grasping the hand of a few key nutrients and making practical, gentle changes to what you eat, you can lower your risk of stroke so dramatically that it feels like a second chance at life. Clinical research, including landmark studies from institutions as prestigious as Harvard and respected centers in Japan and South Korea, reveals a startling truth. Seniors who embrace stroke-conscious nutrition can slash their risk by as much as 30 to 50% over time. Think about that number for a moment. Nearly half of the danger vanished simply because of the choices you made at the grocery store. This isn't a journey fueled by fear or the grim shadow of the hospital wing. This is about empowerment, about reclaiming the sovereignty of your own body and mind. Stroke prevention is rarely found in one heroic, grand decision made in a moment of crisis. Instead, it is found in the soft, steady rhythm of small, smart choices made every single day, one plate at a time. I have watched grandfathers return to their gardens and grandmothers read stories to their grandchildren again, all because they realized that their kitchen was, in fact, the most powerful pharmacy they would ever own. In the chapters we will share together, I am going to walk you through 7 of the most formidable nutrients for stroke prevention, the 7 guardians that stand watch over your neurological health. You will learn not just the dry science of what they do, but the vivid reality of where to find them and how to transform them into meals that are as delicious as they are healing. We are going to explore the deep, rich oils that lubricate the gears of the mind and the vibrant pigments that shield your vessels from the rust of aging. I want you to imagine your body as a magnificent historic vessel that has weathered many storms. It deserves the finest timber and the strongest sails for the journey ahead. As your doctor, but more importantly, as a friend who has witnessed the fragility and the resilience of the human spirit 30,000 times over, I promise you that it is never too late to start. We aren't just talking about survival. We are talking about thriving, about keeping the lights of your memory and your personality burning bright for decades to come. So let us take the first step together away from the shadows of uncertainty and toward the light of health.
Let us begin with the first and perhaps most essential nutrient, a golden essence that your brain absolutely craves and loves beyond measure, the miraculous world of omega-3 fatty acids. I remember the morning Arthur Miller walked into my clinic in Savannah. The humid Georgia air seemed to press against the windows, but inside the silence was heavy with a different kind of weight. Arthur was 82, a retired postal worker who had spent 4 decades walking the sun-drenched streets of this city, yet now his legs felt like lead and his spirit seemed dimmed. He sat across from me, his weathered hands trembling slightly as they rested on his knees, hands that had sorted a million letters of love and loss, now betraying him with a subtle rhythmic shake. He didn't talk about pain. He talked about his grandson's wedding, scheduled for the coming spring. "Doctor," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry parchment, "I've lived a long life, but I'm terrified I won't be there to see him take that walk. I feel like my body is becoming a cage." As a physician who has studied the intricate dance of human longevity for over 30 years, I knew exactly what Arthur was feeling without even looking at his chart. His arteries, once supple and resilient, had become rigid, choked by the silent fires of chronic inflammation. I looked at his scans and saw the story of a lifetime, the narrowing of the vessels, the thickening of the walls, a condition we call atherosclerosis. It is a silent, creeping process that damages the very highways of the brain, increasing the chance of a catastrophic rupture or clot every single day. I leaned forward, looking past the clinical data and into the eyes of a man who just wanted to be a grandfather for a little while longer. I told him, "Arthur, your brain is starving for something the body cannot make on its own. It is starving for the brain's oil, omega-3 fatty acids." I explained to him that these special fats, specifically EPA and DHA, are the master architects of stroke prevention. They perform a miraculous triple action role. They act as a cooling balm to quench the internal inflammation that hardens your arteries. They make your blood less sticky to prevent the clots that cause 87% of all strokes, and they stabilize the very rhythm of your heart. I shared with him a landmark study published in the journal Stroke, which followed thousands of seniors just like him. It proved that those with a high intake of these fats had a 26 to 30% lower risk of stroke. Arthur listened with a desperate kind of intensity, a glimmer of hope returning to his gaze. I told him this wasn't about expensive pills. It was about the simple wild-caught salmon, the humble sardine, and the tiny chia seeds resting in a jar.
We began a journey of restoration right there in that humid Savannah morning. I prescribed him 2 servings of fatty fish per week, wild salmon or mackerel, each no bigger than the palm of his hand. For the days in between, I showed him how to sprinkle ground flax seeds and walnuts onto his morning porridge, explaining that these plant-based ALA fats would help, though his aging body would need the direct EPA from fish to truly flourish. I warned him against the common trap many seniors fall into, eating fish that has been deep fried in inflammatory oils, which cancels out every ounce of benefit. We talked about how his blood-thinning medications might interact with high-dose supplements, so we focused on the purity of whole foods first. Months later, Arthur returned and the transformation was cinematic. The trembling in his hands had quieted, his blood pressure had settled into a steady, healthy hum, and the gray look in his complexion had been replaced by a vital glow. He didn't just attend that wedding, he stood tall in his tuxedo, a living testament to the fact that your brain and heart can be rejuvenated at any age. As I watched him leave my office that day, I realized once again that the most profound healing often begins with a single, smart choice made at the dinner table. Eleanor Vance was a woman who lived among the scent of old paper and the quiet wisdom of books. A former librarian from Portland, Oregon, she was 76 and possessed a mind that could once categorize 1,000 titles without blinking. But when she came to see me, she was mourning. "Dr. Gupta," she said, her eyes wandering to the window where the Oregon mist blurred the trees, "I feel like a thick fog is rolling into my library. I'm forgetful, I'm tired, and I feel heavy inside." Eleanor was struggling with high LDL cholesterol, the bad kind that acts like wet cement inside the delicate vessels of the brain. When this cholesterol builds up, it forms a treacherous plaque that can break off at any moment, causing a sudden blockage of blood flow. As an American physician who has seen the devastating aftermath of thousands of strokes, I knew that Eleanor's fog was a warning sign from her arteries. She felt like she was fading away, losing the sharp edge of her intellect that had defined her entire life. I told her, "Eleanor, We are going to hire a quiet janitor for your blood vessels. We are going to bring in soluble fibers. I explained to her that soluble fiber is a unique substance that dissolves in water to form a gentle, gel-like shield in the digestive system. This gel does something truly remarkable. It physically traps bad cholesterol and carries it out of the body before it can ever enter the bloodstream to do harm. It also slows down the absorption of sugar, preventing the spikes that make blood vessels stiff and weak over time. According to a major study published in the journal Stroke, adding just 5 measly grams of fiber to your daily routine is linked to a 12% lower risk of stroke. I told Eleanor that her healing wouldn't come from a chemical laboratory, but from the oats, the pears, and the beans in her pantry. Most seniors only get half of the 21 to 30 grams they need daily, leaving their arteries vulnerable and their gut microbiome starving. We talked about how a healthy gut actually sends signals to the brain to reduce inflammation and stabilize mood. I gave her a simple recipe, a bowl of rolled oats topped with a chopped apple and a sprinkle of cinnamon, a meal rich in fiber, antioxidants, and hope. The change in Eleanor was gradual, but deeply moving, like the sun slowly burning through a thick morning mist. She started swapping her white bread for hearty whole grains and adding a handful of lentils to her evening soups. She learned to drink plenty of water, understanding that fiber needs hydration to do its work without causing discomfort. Slowly, her cholesterol numbers began to drop, and more importantly, the fog in her mind began to lift. She told me she could finally finish a novel again without losing her place, her eyes sparkling with the joy of a regained identity. Eleanor's story taught me that protecting the brain after 65 is often about the things we add rather than the things we take away. By feeding her body the right kind of fiber, she wasn't just cleaning her arteries, she was restoring the infrastructure of her memories. She was no longer a woman fading into the background. She was the head librarian of her own life once again, sharp, vibrant, and remarkably protected. Harold Hank Reed was a man of steel and grease, an ex-auto mechanic from Detroit who had spent 79 years fixing things that were broken. But when he sat in my examination room, his shoulders were slumped with a defeat no wrench could fix. His blood pressure was a staggering 170/100, a silent, roaring engine of destruction inside his chest. "I'm a ticking time bomb, Doc," he muttered, his voice thick with the frustration of a man who hated being a burden to his daughter. Hank was terrified of the silent killer, and rightfully so, because high blood pressure is the leading architect of stroke, quietly weakening the vessel walls until they can no longer hold the strain. I looked at his calloused hands and realized that Hank didn't need more pills that made him feel dizzy. He needed the internal peacekeepers of the human body, magnesium and potassium. These two minerals are the foundational elements that allow the heart and the arteries to finally relax. I explained to Hank that magnesium is involved in over 300 biochemical reactions, acting as a natural muscle relaxant for the arteries, preventing them from tightening into a state of crisis. Potassium works alongside it, acting as a counterbalance to the sodium that was bloating his system and stiffening his vessels. Nearly 80% of American seniors are deficient in magnesium, a tragedy that leads to irregular heart rhythms like atrial fibrillation, which exponentially raises stroke risk. I told him about a meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showing that maintaining magnesium levels above 375 milligrams can reduce ischemic stroke risk by 22%. I showed him that his medicine was a warm, mashed sweet potato, a bowl of black beans, and a handful of pumpkin seeds. We talked about how the ideal ratio, more potassium, less sodium, could drop his systolic pressure by 5 full points almost immediately. Hank, the mechanic, understood the logic of fluid balance and pressure systems. He saw his body as a machine that simply needed the right grade of oil and coolant. He went home to Detroit and began his internal tune-up, trading processed salts for herbs and loading his plate with leafy greens and beets. He loved the simplicity of it, no complex prescriptions, just real food that tasted like the earth. Over the next few months, the tremors in his muscles faded and the red flush of high pressure left his face. When he returned for his checkup, his blood pressure had settled into a beautiful, steady 130/80. "I feel like the engine is finally idling right, Doc," he said with a rare, wide grin. Hank wasn't just avoiding a stroke, he was reclaiming his dignity and his role as the patriarch of his family. He realized that the greatest fix he ever performed wasn't on a car, but on the very vessels that kept his own heart beating. He had found peace within his own skin,
protected by the quiet power of the minerals he had once overlooked. In my 3 decades of practice, I have often told my patients that the most beautiful defense against a stroke is a plate that looks like a masterpiece of art. We live in a world that rusts us from the inside out. We call this process oxidative stress, fueled by unstable molecules called free radicals. These radicals are like microscopic sparks flying off the engines of our metabolism and the stresses of our environment, causing the delicate lining of our brain's vessels to stiffen and inflame. For a person over 65, these sparks can lead to a devastating fire, a stroke that steals speech and memory in an instant. This is where the internal firefighters come in, the antioxidants. These are the vibrant pigments found in nature's most colorful offerings, the deep blues of berries, the rich greens of kale, and the golden glow of turmeric. A major study in the journal Neurology followed a large group of older adults and found that those with the highest intake of antioxidant-rich foods enjoyed a 29% lower risk of stroke. I want you to visualize these antioxidants as a radiant shield, wrapping themselves around your LDL cholesterol to prevent it from oxidizing and sticking to your artery walls. They are vascular regulators, helping the blood flow to your brain's movement and memory centers with the grace of a mountain stream. I remember a patient who started every day with a cup of green tea and a small bowl of blackberries. She lived to be 96 with a mind as clear as a bell. You don't need expensive powders. You need the real, whole foods that have survived the sun and the wind. Dark chocolate, with at least 70% cocoa, is a powerful ally in moderation, containing flavonoids that improve brain circulation. Citrus fruits provide the vitamin C that repairs the microtears in your vessel walls, while beets offer betalains that act like a tonic for your circulation. Spices like cinnamon and cloves are among the most potent antioxidant sources on the planet, gram for gram, yet we often leave them forgotten in the back of the cupboard. I encourage you to season your life generously, not just for the flavor, but for the defense of your very soul. When you cook, think of yourself as an alchemist, blending colors and nutrients to create a shield for your brain. Every bite of a red bell pepper or a purple sweet potato is a message of love to your arteries. We must avoid the temptation of high-dose antioxidant supplements, which can sometimes backfire and increase bleeding risks. The magic is in the synergy of whole food. I have seen the before and after in the eyes of my patients, the transition from a dull, tired gaze to one of spark and vitality. It is the difference between a life lived in fear of the next spark and a life lived under a radiant, colorful shield. Your brain's future is written in the colors of your food, and the more vibrant your plate, the brighter that future will remain. There is a profound mystery in the human body regarding where we store our strength, and often we find that our greatest assets can become our greatest liabilities if they are not guided correctly. I'm talking about calcium, the mineral we all take to keep our bones strong after 65, yet it has a dark side that many doctors fail to mention. Without the right guidance, calcium is like a directionless worker. It can wander away from your bones and settle into your artery walls, making them hard and brittle as stone. This calcification is a silent invitation for a stroke, as stiff vessels cannot handle the pulse of life. This is why vitamin K2 is the traffic controller we all desperately need but rarely discuss. Its job is to activate a specific protein called matrix GLA, which literally pushes calcium out of the soft tissues of the arteries and locks it securely into the bones and teeth. A study in the Journal of Nutrition involving 16,000 women showed that those with the highest K2 intake had a 20% lower risk of heart disease and stroke. For the senior focused on longevity, vitamin K2 is perhaps the most underrated guardian in the entire nutritional pantheon. As we age, our body's ability to regulate calcium becomes less efficient, and many of us are taking supplements that might actually be stiffening our vessels if we aren't careful. If you have high blood pressure or diabetes, your risk of arterial calcification is even higher, making K2 an essential part of your daily rhythm. Unlike vitamin K1 found in greens, K2 is found in smaller amounts in specific, often fermented foods. I often talk to my patients about natto, a fermented soybean dish from Japan that is the world's highest source of K2. It is no coincidence that Japan has some of the lowest stroke rates in the world. But for those of us in the West, we can find this protection in aged cheeses like Gouda and Edam, pasture-raised egg yolks, and even grass-fed butter. Imagine a breakfast of 2 pasture-raised eggs scrambled with spinach and a sprinkle of aged cheese on whole grain toast. This is a stroke-conscious masterpiece. It's about ensuring that the very thing you take for your bones doesn't become the thing that clogs your brain. I've seen patients with known plaque buildup start incorporating K2 and vitamin D3 together, and the improvement in their arterial flexibility is nothing short of miraculous. If you are on blood thinners like warfarin, you must be careful, as K2 can interfere with the medication's effect, but for most, it is a safe and vital addition. By managing where your calcium goes, you are effectively softening your future, ensuring your arteries remain as elastic as they were in your youth. You are not just building strong bones, you are clearing a path for a long, vibrant life, free from the stony grip of calcification. Martha Higgins was a retired school teacher from Boston, a woman whose life had been dedicated to the clarity of thought and the beauty of the English language. But at 71, she walked into my office with a look of pure, unadulterated terror. "Dr. Gupta," she whispered, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. "I think I have Alzheimer's. I'm forgetful. I'm stumbling when I walk. And I feel like I'm living in a thick gray cloud." Martha was experiencing the classic signs of vitamin B12 deficiency, a condition that is tragically common in over 15% of seniors but is often misdiagnosed as permanent dementia. After 65, our stomach acid declines and we lose the ability to absorb B12 from our food, even if we are eating meat every day. B12 is the master protector of the myelin sheath, the insulation that allows your nerves to fire correctly, and it is the only thing that can lower homocysteine, a toxic byproduct in the blood. When homocysteine levels rise, they act like sandpaper on the inside of your arteries, causing damage that leads directly to clots and strokes. I looked at Martha's lab results and saw her B12 levels were at a dismal 200 picograms per milliliter. Most labs call this normal, but for a brain over 70, it is a state of emergency. A meta-analysis of 19 clinical trials showed that lowering homocysteine with B vitamins can reduce stroke risk by up to 15%. I told Martha, "You aren't losing your mind. Your nerves are just starving for oxygen and insulation." We began an aggressive protocol of B12-rich foods, beef liver, wild salmon, and Greek yogurt, alongside a sublingual supplement that absorbed directly under her tongue, bypassing her struggling stomach. The transformation was like watching a black and white film suddenly burst into vivid, technicolor life. Within 2 months, her balance improved, her brain fog vanished, and she was back to correcting the grammar of her grandchildren with her usual sharp wit. She realized that the dementia she feared was merely a fixable deficiency, a biological hiccup that had been stealing her vitality. B12 is the ultimate guardian of brain clarity, ensuring that your red blood cells can carry the oxygen your neurons need to thrive. If you feel unusually tired, or if you notice a tingling in your hands and feet, do not simply blame old age. Check your B12. It is a simple blood test that can save you from a lifetime of confusion and the dark shadow of a stroke. For seniors who follow a vegetarian diet or take medications for acid reflux or diabetes, this nutrient is even more critical. Martha's story is a powerful reminder that our golden years can be kept bright and clear with the right nutritional key. She went from a foggy, fearful horizon to a future that was sharp, focused, and profoundly protected. Dorothy Gale was 85, a quilter from Des Moines whose hands were a map of a long, well-lived life. She came to see me because she felt brittle, as if her very veins were made of glass that might shatter at any moment. "I bruise so easily, doctor," she told me, showing me a purple mark on her forearm that had appeared from a mere bump. This was a clear sign that her vascular walls were weakening, a condition that often precedes a hemorrhagic or ischemic stroke in the elderly. I explained to Dorothy that her body's maintenance crew was running low on vitamin C, the essential ingredient for building collagen. Collagen is the biological glue that keeps your arteries and capillaries strong, flexible, and capable of withstanding the pressure of your heartbeat. A 10-year study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that seniors with the highest blood levels of vitamin C had a 42% lower risk of stroke. I told Dorothy that vitamin C is also a powerful water-soluble antioxidant that protects the fluid parts of her body, like the blood plasma, from oxidative rust. When you have enough vitamin C, your body can repair the micro tears in the vessel walls before they can ever become the site of a dangerous blood clot. It also boosts the effectiveness of vitamin E and helps with iron absorption, which is vital for keeping her energy levels high at 85. I encouraged her to fill her kitchen with red bell peppers, strawberries, and kiwis, foods that are far more effective than a simple glass of sugary orange juice. We talked about how even a minor stroke can be recovered from more quickly if the body has a surplus of vitamin C to aid in the repair process. Dorothy loved the idea that her medicine was a fresh fruit salad, refreshing and easy on her digestion. The change in her was visible within weeks. Her skin regained a healthy elasticity, her bruising stopped, and she felt a new sense of resilience in her limbs. She described it as a renaissance, a feeling of being rebuilt from the inside out, stitch by stitch, much like the quilts she made. Vitamin C is the unsung hero of the vascular system, a simple nutrient that guards the very integrity of our lifeblood. By keeping her collagen levels high, Dorothy was ensuring that her pipes would stay strong for another decade or more. She was no longer a fragile woman made of glass. She was a reinforced vessel, sailing through her 80s with strength and grace. Her story proves that even at 85, the body is capable of profound renewal if we only give it the right tools. There is a secret hidden in the deep colors of a cherry and the bitter complexity of dark chocolate, a group of compounds called flavonoids that are perhaps nature's most sophisticated medicine for the brain. These phytonutrients are vascular regulators, meaning they help your arteries dilate and contract with the ease of a master musician's bow. They improve brain perfusion, which is a fancy way of saying they ensure that every corner of your mind receives a steady, rich supply of oxygenated blood. Research from Harvard involving over 90,000 women proved that those with the highest flavonoid intake enjoyed a 19% lower risk of ischemic stroke. I have seen the flavonoid flow transform the lives of seniors who felt they were losing their physical coordination and mental quickness. These compounds act as gentle platelet managers, making the blood flow smoothly without the dangerous thinning effect of many pharmaceutical drugs. I often tell my patients to start their day with a brain boost tea, a cup of high-quality green tea with a squeeze of lemon and a few frozen blueberries stirred in. This simple ritual provides a massive dose of catechins and anthocyanins, which calm the inflammation in your vessel walls and protect your memory centers. Dark chocolate, with at least 70% cocoa, contains flavonols that have been shown to improve cognitive function in older adults within just a few hours of consumption. We find these protectors in red onions, kale, parsley, and even the membranes of citrus fruits that we often throw away. It's about creating a synergy in your body where different plant compounds work together to shield you from the damage of aging. I've watched patients who were struggling with small vessel disease see a marked improvement in their gait and their mood after embracing a flavonoid-rich diet. This isn't just about nutrition, it's about the pleasure of eating foods that love you back. You don't need a prescription for a handful of blackberries or a sprig of parsley. You just need the awareness that these are your brain's best friends. By reducing the stickiness of your blood, you are preventing the silent blockages that can lead to a TIA or a full-blown stroke. The flavonoid flow is a journey toward a more fluid, responsive, and resilient self. It is the secret of the morning tea that keeps the mind bright and the blood moving like a clear, powerful river. I have seen it work 30,000 times, and it can work for you too, one delicious bite at a time. Your brain is waiting for the protection that only the rainbow of nature can provide. We have traveled together through a landscape of science and stories, from the deep-sea oils of omega-3s to the stony mysteries of vitamin K2. You have met Arthur, Eleanor, Hank, Martha, and Dorothy, real people with real fears who found their way back to health through the simple power of the plate. Now it is time for the most important part of this journey. Your turn. My final prescription for you is not written on a pad, it is written in your daily routine. Stroke prevention after 65 is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of cumulative daily decisions. Every morning is a new opportunity to build your defense, starting with a breakfast that nourishes your nerves and cleans your arteries. Imagine a smoothie with oats, chia seeds, blueberries, and spinach, a single glass that contains almost every guardian we have discussed today. This is how you take control. This is how you tell your body that you are still in the fight. As the sun sets on our time together, I want you to remember the summary of our 7 guardians. Omega-3s reduce the fire of inflammation and prevent the stickiness of clots. Soluble fiber sweeps away the bad cholesterol and stabilizes your blood sugar. Magnesium and potassium act as the peacekeepers that finally bring your blood pressure under control. Antioxidants are the colorful firefighters that shield your cells from the rust of time. Vitamin K2 is the traffic controller that keeps your arteries soft and your bones strong. Vitamin B12 is the spark that keeps your nerves firing and your mind clear. And flavonoids are the secret flow that ensures your brain is always bathed in the life-giving oxygen it deserves. These are not exotic, unreachable goals. They are ingredients waiting for you at the local market, affordable and deeply effective.
I have stood by the bedsides of too many people who waited until tomorrow to change their lives, only to find that tomorrow came with a stroke that took away their independence. I don't want that for you. I want you to feel the empowerment that comes from knowing you can cut your risk by half, starting with your very next meal. If you start with just one thing today, a walk in the fresh air, a handful of walnuts, or a cup of green tea, you are already winning. You are building a fortress for your brain, one brick at a time. The smallest changes truly do make the biggest differences over the long haul of a life. Do not let fear paralyze you. Let knowledge mobilize you toward a future where you are the master of your own health. I urge you to take this message to heart and, more importantly, to your kitchen. Share this wisdom with someone you love, a spouse, a sibling, or a friend who is also crossing into these golden years. You might just be the reason they get to see their own wedding promise come true. If you found this journey helpful, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and join our community of lifelong learners. Your support allows us to keep bringing this vital, life-saving information to the people who need it most. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments which of these 7 nutrients you are going to focus on first. Remember, my name is Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and I believe in your body's ability to heal and protect itself at any age. Knowledge is your strongest weapon, but action is your greatest shield. Now, go forth and live a long, sharp, and beautiful life.